Welcome to Damn Good Movie Memories with your host, Brian Davis. This podcast is the cure for your long commute and super boring workday.
Molly McGrath always knew what she wanted.
Hey, you want to coach football? Fine, you got it. At Central High.
Her team, the Wildcats.
Ready to play, coach.
Do you want to play football?
Yeah?
Don't wear yourselves out. You want to get rid of me?
Absolutely.
You're in training as of right now. Put that out. You think a woman can't be tough enough? Watch me. Forgot my purse. No, I don't intend to coach a bunch of losers.
And how did your folks let you get like this?
He probably ate his folks.
Your mama says you ugly. Hey! From here on out, I call the shot.
Tell us what to do.
Win, you turkey!
All right.
How are you enjoying the game thus far?
All right! You make this point and every girl in the free world will want you.
You being humiliated out there. Get out of my face!
Goldie Hawn,
Are you sure I'm the right person for this job?
Wildcats. Football had it coming.
Hey there, it's Brian Davis, and for this week's episode, we're going to cover the movie Wildcats from 1986. The studio Warner Brothers, a release date February 14, 1986, with a running time of 106 minutes and the rating of R. The box office took in $26.2 million, making it the 37th ranked movie of 1986. Rotten Tomatoes gives it 22% rotten from 18 reviews. We can ignore those. But we won't ignore Roger Ebert, who was, I guess, one of those 18 reviews at the time, and he gave it 1.5 out of 4 stars. So here's his review. Wildcats is allegedly about Goldie Hawn's attempts to find success as the coach of a boys' high school football team. But most of the big scenes and almost all of the dialogue in the movie are assigned to her grown-up friends, and the team gets lost in the shuffle. Her coaching is the gimmick, not the subject of the movie. With the exception of a Refrigerator Perry clone, played by Tab Thacker, who plays the tallest and fattest member of her team, Hawn's players are sort of a faceless mass that mills around on cue. The movie, which was filmed in Chicago, was directed by Michael Ritchie, the same man who made The Bad News Bears 10 years ago. That was a movie where we really cared about the members of the team, a movie that was about a coach and a team. Wildcats is about how spunky Hawn is and how cute it's supposedly to be that this little woman can make all those great big football players do what she says. See what happens here? The filmmakers, the producers, and Hawn herself bought the premise instead of looking for the plot. The problem with the movie is that they started with a character description instead of with a story. The fact that Hawn plays a boys' football coach is not in itself interesting. Her relationship with the team would have been interesting if they developed one. But no, they thought they had everything they needed. They thought they could clone Rocky one more time. I was discussing the formula in this space just the other week. It's called the Quidvic Plague. The acronym stands for Climb from Despair to Victory. Now, I've seen this sort of ending before. Just in the last few weeks, for example, I saw the winning football game at the end of the Best of Times, and the winning hockey match at the end of Youngblood, and God knows how many winning bicycle races and wrestling matches I saw last year, not to mention Rocky IV, of course. The Quidvic Plagues, rhymes with Kidpick, is becoming an insidious force in the movie industry. It convinces producers that they have a plot when, in fact, all they have is a boring structure to trap their characters. Man, if Roger Ebert was alive today and he saw all the superhero films and how basically every film is the same now, he'd really be sick. He'd harken back to the good old days of the 80s. Anyway, back to the end of his review. Wildcats is clearly an attempt by Hawn to repeat a formula that was wonderfully successful in Private Benjamin. Wide-eyed Goldie copes with the real world. It was less successful in Protocol, and now it's worn out altogether. It's the end of Roger Ebert's review. All right, sorry, Roger. I disagree wholeheartedly and loved the movie as a kid, and I still love it today. Look, maybe it's because I'm a sucker for Goldie Hawn movies, but Wildcats, for me, is super enjoyable and deeper than the film likely gets credit for. In any case, I can agree to disagree with my favorite movie critic from time to time, right? Okay, let's get into the main cast. Of course, Goldie Hawn plays Molly. I covered Hawn's career in the Private Benjamin episode. So from Private Benjamin in 1980 to Wildcats in 1986, Hawn appeared in 4 movies. She was in Seems Like Old Times with Chevy Chase, Best Friends with Burt Reynolds, Swing Shift with Kurt Russell, and The Very Fun Protocol, which Ebert didn't enjoy either. My mom does, though. The other actors in the film are great. It's Swoosie Kurtz, Nipsey Russell, who is really good, Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson in their film debuts, Robyn Lively in her second movie, Jan Hooks, who of course went on to Saturday Night Live fame, Mykelti Williamson, who of course ended up playing Bubba in Forrest Gump, and the great Bruce McGill, who played D-Day in Animal House. Now, Ebert mentioned the director Michael Ritchie, which I also covered in the Bad News Bears episode. We've done a lot of good movies. He also directed the football movie Semi-Tough with Burt Reynolds, and the great comedy Fletch with Chevy Chase prior to Wildcats. Okay, let's get into the making of the film. So screenwriter Ezra Sachs came up with an idea where Goldie Hawn's character would be at a sports bar filled with men watching a football game. So each guy at the table she's near predicts what the next play is going to be. Finally, after everyone's made their prediction, Goldie casually says it's going to be a Statue of Liberty play. Of course, the guys dismiss her as crazy, but sure enough, the next play is exactly that, the Statue of Liberty. And that was the essence of her character. She's always dismissed, never taken seriously, and always needing to prove herself, though she was often way more educated in the game of football than the vast majority of her counterparts. So a producer at Warner Brothers and a friend of Sachs asked if he had anything written that would be suited for Goldie Hawn, as the producer was going to meet with her in the coming days. And that's when he pitched the outline of Wildcats. The producer, of course, loved it and decided to pitch it to Goldie with Sachs. I realized I almost said Golden Sachs. Anyway, Sachs said that after he gave his spiel, Goldie stood up and gave him a hug and turned to her film partner and said, "We just paid for our trip," which meant she was going to sign on to make the film. The original title of the script was going to be called First and Goal, but the execs didn't feel that the average audience would get the title, especially for an audience that was drawn just to Goldie Hawn films. So the film was changed to the name of the team, of course, being the Wildcats. Sachs watched hours and hours of NFL game film, along with interviews from coaches, specifically to nail down the plays and the dialogue for the script. And Sachs said Goldie was really easy to work with, and Kurt Russell was even on set to read lines with her. Okay, let's get into the film. So it begins with a retro montage of home movies, presumably of the characters Molly and Verna when they were young girls. In all of these clips, Molly has a football or hanging out with her father, who was a football coach, along with his team. Verna is with Molly as well, but Molly seems to be the most interested in the game of football. For example, we see a clip of the two sisters opening their Christmas presents. Verna gets a doll, and Molly gets a football helmet. The montage ends, and we cut to modern times as a grown-up Molly, Goldie Hawn, and Verna, Swoosie Kurtz, are together as Verna is taking a gag photo of Molly for the high school yearbook. Molly is fully dressed in a football uniform. She works as a high school track coach, but has aspirations of being a football coach instead. Verna is an English teacher, or at least that's what I think she is. We never really do find out what she does. Anyway, an opening for the junior varsity football coach is now available, and she pleads with the principal to give her the job. She spent her whole life around the game because of her father, and she has tons of knowledge. The principal is, of course, a coward and kicks her request to the very sexist and chauvinistic varsity football coach, Dan Darwell, played by Bruce McGill. Verna suggests Molly go on a pseudo-date with Darwell just to kind of butter him up so he would agree for her to take the JV position. So they go on a very 1980s date. Racquetball. You never see anyone playing racquetball anymore. Unfortunately, Molly does the worst thing possible, and that is she kicks Darwell's ass in racquetball. But frankly, even if she lost, Darwell doesn't believe women should be coaching male sports, regardless if she's actually more qualified than most men. In any case, Darwell promises to meet the superintendent on Monday to supposedly put in a good word for Molly. Molly is a single mother with two girls, Alice and Marion, 13 and 6 years old. Her oldest, Alice, is played by Robyn Lively. Molly's ex-husband is named Frank, played by James Keach, and he's your typical 80s yuppie schmuck. Frank has custody of the kids for weekends, so Molly can prepare for a potential coaching gig. Molly has tons of notebooks with scripted plays from her father. However, come Monday, the inevitable happens. The principal gives the job to another teacher, a male home ec teacher, which is ironic considering that home ec is usually designated for females. Male home ec teachers, I guess, are okay, but a female football coach is far too taboo to fly. Molly is rightfully pissed and quizzes the home ec teacher about specific defense formations and coaching fundamentals that any rookie coach would know. It's obvious he's not qualified for the position, other than being male. Darwell shows up to this farce in the principal's office with a smirk on his face and gives Molly her wish. She'll get a coaching job. And it's not even junior varsity. It will be varsity at Central High, which is considered the roughest high school in Chicago. Darwell is setting up Molly for failure, but she won't pass up this great opportunity no matter how challenging the school is. Molly heads to Central, and we see a montage of inner-city Chicago, which is a complete opposite of the affluent suburban area where Prescott High is located. Molly arrives at Central and is greeted by 2 Doberman pinschers who chase her through the halls. That's the school's security, it seems. Molly then meets Central's principal, the very cheery Mr. Edwards, played by Nipsey Russell. So Mr. Edwards' stock answer to everything is very funny. It's always, right. He's great in this role, by the way. Definitely one of the highlights of Wildcats. Molly finds out that she was basically hired because nobody wants this job. She won't even have assistant coaches. She can't even have practices before school starts in a week. As Mr. Edwards puts it, he wouldn't even know how to round the guys up. Edwards tries to cheer up Molly, saying that she'll have a number of returning players from the last season. Though Molly notices that they only won 1 game the season prior, and that's because the other team's bus broke down. So Molly is not only in charge of a team full of tough kids, but they're not even that good. The next day, Molly meets her team in the locker room, and she's greeted by the entire team with only their jerseys on. No pants. And this, of course, is led by Tremaine, Wesley Snipes.
And suited up and ready to play, coach. Good.
Leon, the 5 and field minutes. All right. Now, I don't intend to coach a bunch of losers.
She has a really cute ass. You notice that?
I was raised on this sport. It's part of me, and I know that I can help you learn the game and win.
So none of the guys respect Molly, and they don't want to hear the knowledge she can bring the team. And also, by the way, another player named Krasinski is played by none other than Woody Harrelson. So years before White Man Can't Jump, Snipes and Harrelson appeared in a different sports movie, Wildcats. Molly tries to get the team to do calisthenics to warm up, but half the team isn't interested and bails. One of the guys in the stands watching the practice is Lavander Bird Williams, played by Mykelti Williamson, of course, of Forrest Gump fame. I mentioned he was Bubba, who was more interested in selling the guy's stolen merchandise than playing football. Verna picks up Molly after practice, and Molly says, she's just going to quit because the team will never follow her. Verna tells Molly that Darwell has a pool going to see how long Molly will last before she quits. Suffice to say, Molly doesn't quit. The next day, the players who are not the first stringers show up on time to practice, and they participate in the warm-up drills, while the other players kind of saunter in later for the supposed scrimmage. Now, Molly has been working on plays with the guys who actually, participated in practice, and on the first scrimmage play, they score an easy razzle-dazzle touchdown on the players who did not bother to practice. Next, the same guys who practice are now on defense, and they get a sack due to their blanket coverage that Molly coached them on. The first stringers are starting to see how Molly might know what she's doing.
She's trying to shit. I'm going in. You going in? 3.
Okay, what are we gonna run now?
Yo, double reverse, I'll take it. Why don't you just play quarterback, Tremaine?
I ain't seen you do no end zone dancing, Marvell. Hey, come on, somebody think of a good play. Let's go.
You just run anything, but just stay out of my way.
All right, left formation, double reverse on beam. Okay, and try not to get me sacked this time, bumblehead. Ready? Let's break. Now that's on the chicken shit side, you know?
Real sorry about that, Coach. I was just running my blocking assignment.
I guess practice is over, huh?
Let's
get
Coach.
out of here.
So yeah, Molly ends up getting intentionally run over by Chirullo, played by Jesus Garcia, and gets a black eye in the process. The next day, Molly shows up to school and her office has just been trashed. She's fed up and she decides to get the players' respect in a different way.
Put your pants on and listen up.
Hey, Coach,
Yes.
why don't you quit so we can get us a real coach?
You really want to get rid of me?
Absolutely.
Step outside. If I drop before any one of you, you can tell me to go to hell. But if you quit before I do, then from here on out, I call the shots.
I bet you $50 that the coach outruns these
Fuck you, Coach McGrath.
Better.
So as much as I enjoy the entire movie, that last scene is by far the best part of the film for me. She put all of the guys in their place the only way they could understand, physically. If she couldn't get to them mentally, she showed them that they couldn't keep up with her physically. And her telling Tremaine that she ran the Boston Marathon twice was absolutely priceless. So screenwriter Ezra Sachs had a tough time trying to figure out this key scene. He talked to an executive at Warner Brothers, and the executive said that his wife was a cross-country, long-distance runner, and he could never keep up with her. Sachs thought that was brilliant and then wrote the scene. It's a brilliant scene because it's funny and believable. But Molly's victory is short-lived because that night Frank and his new wife Stephanie, played by Jan Hooks of Saturday Night Live fame, come by the house. Frank found out about Molly's coaching gig and hates the idea because he's a control freak, which is why they're no longer married. Molly tells Frank to shove it, as she should. The next day, we get a good old 80s montage where the guys have decided to buy into actually taking practice seriously for a change and having fun in the process. The montage song is called Good Hands by the Isley Brothers, which has a perfect sound for an 80s montage.
she can deliver. She got the goods that make a young man shiver. She can be cold, she can be kind.
So even though the guys are getting better in practice, they still aren't a very good team and really in need of a few impact players. Most notably, a quarterback. In any case, they're only down 4 points at halftime, and Molly tries to rally the troops.
Now we're 4 points behind. We can push right past these guys, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now you don't sound very convinced. Come on, don't you guys have any pride? Yeah. Don't you have any guts at all? Yeah. All right then, get out there and get tough. Yeah. Get mean. Yeah. These Cougars will be nothing but a fur ball when we get done with them.
Yeah. Let's go eat some pussy.
The look on Wesley Snipes' face when he delivers the pussy line is classic, along with Goldie Hawn's expression. Unfortunately, the pep talk didn't do much, and the Wildcats lost 31-12. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't give some love to the Wildcats cheerleaders, who are amazing, even if they only have 2 girls to start with. You really have to see the movie, and you'll die with how funny they are doing their dances and songs at the same time. Also, after their loss to the Cougars, the Wildcat players decided to steal the Cougars' mascot, which is a goat. I know, I guess it's meant to be funny and ironic. Of course, Molly is the one who has to return the goat when she leaves it in the basketball court of the opposing school. Unfortunately for Molly, because she's trying so hard to succeed in her job, she's not able to give her own kids the attention they were used to. Alice, in particular, starts to rebel by dyeing her hair pink and telling Molly that she doesn't even care about them, only their players. Molly has a heart-to-heart talk with the kids and lets them know that they are by far the most important thing to her, but she also needs their help to succeed. By succeeding as a coach, she is showing her own kids that they can fulfill their own dreams and be whatever they want to be when they grow up. Molly finds out that the key to success of the Wildcats is getting Lavander on the team to play quarterback. Unfortunately, he's essentially dropped out of school and he's basically a hustler, though he's always watching the Wildcats' practices and games. So Molly decides to go to his house to try to recruit him, which leads her to some interesting places and meeting some interesting people. She finally finds Bird, as he's called by his friends. Molly ends up getting into a predicament in the process of trying to get Bird on the team, as Bird and his friends are trying to rob some televisions, but of course do not tell Molly that when she drives them to a back alley. The 2 other guys end up stealing Molly's van when they see the cops patrolling, and then Molly and Bird end up hiding in a trash dumpster. Molly decides to blackmail Bird into playing football, or she will start screaming for the police. Bird has no other choice than to agree. Bird shows up to practice the next day, much to the amazement of the other players, and even Krasinski is fine with giving up the quarterbacking job and playing slot back instead. And like most comedic sports films, all it takes is one key player, and magically the team starts playing better, and we get the obligatory game montage, and the Wildcats win 19-17. To celebrate their first victory, Molly throws the team a party at her house, and everything is going great until Frank shows up to pick up the girls for the weekend. Frank thinks the players are a bad influence on the girls and threatens to take Molly to court in order to get full custody. If Molly doesn't quit, Frank will move forward with trying to get full custody. In the meantime, the Wildcats continue to win, which means montage galore. And of course, make the playoffs. Playoffs? Only football fans will get that one. Look up Jim Mora.
Well, I'll start off by saying this. Do not blame that game on the defense, okay? I don't care who you play, whether it's a high school team, a junior college team, a college team, much less an NFL team. When you turn the ball over 5 times, 4 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown, 3 others in field position to set up touchdowns, you ain't gonna beat anybody I just talked about. Anybody. All right? And that was a disgraceful performance, in my opinion. We threw that game. We gave it away by doing that. We gave them the friggin' game. In my opinion, that sucked. You can't turn the ball over 5 times like that. Holy crap. I don't know who the hell we think we are when we do something like that. Unbelievable. 5 turnovers. One of them, we've thrown 4 interceptions for touchdowns this year. That might be an NFL record. That's pitiful. I mean, it's absolutely pitiful to perform like that. Pitiful. What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game. Another game.
Anyway, Frank has other plans for Molly and the kids and wants to put the kids in a private boarding school. And then Molly will take over as the PE teacher at the school. Molly tells Frank to shove it, again, of course. Now, it takes almost half the movie, but one of the most interesting and funny characters in the film is Finch, played by Tab Thacker. He was also in Police Academy 4, playing the character House. Finch is basically a hustler, but in a more refined way, because he's incredibly intelligent, and he sells the players term papers so they'll pass their classes. Finch ends up on the team after Trullo injures himself by attempting to dent a locker with his head. And it didn't end well for him, as you can imagine. The Wildcats win their first playoff game, no thanks to Finch, who is a lazy sack of shit. And they end up making the championship against her former school, Prescott, of course, because it has to end that way. Central has a pep rally for the team that night, with a young LL Cool J performing. But the punch gets spiked, and Alice gets drunk without even realizing it. Things come to a head that night when Frank finds out and confronts Molly.
Molly, I'm getting custody of the girls.
You don't have to drive me home, Coach.
You have obviously lost your grip on reality.
You could pay for a cab.
You can't. No, you won't see that you have lost control of what goes on in your own house.
$20 should do it. Well, maybe 15. But 3 points.
Finch! You've got guts galore threatening me with losing custody, Frank. I was the one who took care of Marion when she had the croup. I was the one who comforted Alice when she woke up in the middle of the night with nightmares for 6 months after you left. I was the one who blew up a house full of balloons for your daughter's 4th birthday, which you couldn't even find the time to show up at. So don't tell me that I've lost my grip on reality. I can't lose my grip on reality. I'm submerged up to here in reality.
Would you just stop being so dramatic, for God's sake?
Oh, if I didn't think you'd use it against me, I'd punch your face in.
I'd do it for $10.
You just keep your fat ass out of this.
Frank!
No charge.
All right, so what happens with Molly and the kids? And how do the Wildcats do in the championship game? I think you can guess, but there are a few fun surprises during the game. And it wouldn't be an 80s sports movie without a team rap video, right? Just like the 1985 Chicago Bears Super Bowl Shuffle.
Wildcats. Wildcats. I say they call me Tremaine, the ebony lover. I validate the theory when I'm under the cover. It's the sport of kings. Madeline diamond rings.
Football.
My name's Tarula, I'm a real bad dude, making sounds and noises that are certainly rude. But when we're on the field, my noises aren't art like or a plain old bar. It's the sport of kings, Madeline diamond rings.
Football.
I was leader of the team for about a week, and my specialty was the quarterback sneak. I was sacked and attacked, my bag was packed when I got the word in the form of a bird. You know, now.
Better than diamond rings.
Football.
We once were a team that never could mesh it, but now we're something fresher than fresh.
You think we're jamming, and that's a fact. Everybody say, Wildcats, 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 Wildcats. It's the sport of kings, better than diamond rings.
little girls and no other sucker made a banner that was a bad mother.
Don't cuss.
Not us.
It's the sport of kings, better than diamond rings.
Football.
Ha ha ha, my name is Finch, and as you know, I used to sit on the bench. Money, food, are necessities of life. Those are the things that keep me nice. But when I don't get them, I go berserk and act just like a 400-pound jerk. Beat this out as soon as you can with just kicking it around, my man. It's the sport of kings, better than diamond rings. Football.
Wildcats.
Football.
Wildcats.
Football.
Wildcats.
Football.
I got it.
Wildcats.
Football.
Wildcats.
Football.
Wildcats.
Football.
Wildcats.
Football.
Wildcats.
Football.
Wildcats.
Football.
So what I find great about films from the past is that they could have a message without being preachy or heavy-handed, and they could still be very enjoyable. The problem with today is if the same premise of Wildcats was made, it would be terrible and would feel like a lecture. The reason Wildcats work so well is that it can be funny and still have a good message. That is something today's filmmakers and writers seem to have a real difficulty accomplishing. The art of being subtle is sadly a thing of the past. But thankfully, there are countless films from the past to revisit, and I do, and hopefully you do as well. All right, a fun fact, the filming of the movie was done during the summer. Extras were asked to show up in winter gear and act like it was cold outside, but the temperature was in the 80s on the days of filming. All right, I found two guys that are definitely fans of Wildcats, and that are special guest Metal Mike Tyler and Bill Roseberry, who, of course, are part of the dynamic duo responsible for the Metal Mike Show, which you can hear every Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on thatmetalstation.com. So let's talk to Mike and Bill, and then I'll be back next week to talk about yet another random movie from my DVD collection. All right, you had Montana to Rice, you had Favre to Sharp, and you had Bradshaw to Swan. Well, now we got Brian to Bill to Mike, Metal Mike Tyler, and they're all back, and we're all going to talk about, I'm not going to call it a classic, but we're going to talk about a fun movie. It's called Wildcats from 1986, starring Goldie Hawn. Welcome, guys, and this is a first to get you guys both on at the same time.
This is epically historic, man. I mean, and I love the little Bradshaw to Swan reference,
I tried to pick everyone's favorite team.
Mike, classic Mike, selfish. Everything's about the Steelers.
You're fucking right, it is.
I was about to say, great job on recognizing the Steelers and the Packers for him and I.
Fuck the Packers.
But no, he doesn't. He only cares about the Steelers.
That's right. Actually, I like the Packers. I mean, I'm not a fan, but I respect them. Let's just put it that way.
Well, good. I appreciate that.
Old school smash mouth football, and even the Niners, man, a lot of grit in those teams.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were labeled as a finesse team because of the West Coast offense, but they forgot that they just did everything backwards in the 80s. They ran the ball when they should have passed. So there you go.
And Ronnie, there was nothing finesse about Ronnie Lott.
Thank you. Right. I was just going to say that, man. Ronnie Lott, the word finesse does not come to mind when I think of Ronnie Lott.
That's right. They had a good defense. But anyway, we are going to talk about football. And so this is that's right. The football rap, which LL Cool J, there you go. This is an interesting one in the sense of I don't know how great the gameplay is, but it's an entertaining movie. And before we get into the actual movie, we'll start with Mike. Were you a fan of Goldie Hawn before this film?
I've loved Goldie Hawn probably as long as I can remember. I mean, what's not to love? I couldn't even really tell you what my first movie I saw her in. I think it was Private Benjamin, maybe. I was a little guy, but
that would make sense. Yeah.
But yeah, I've been, because my parents, they liked her too, and yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan. She's awesome. Now and incredibly cute and just amazing. Yeah, and I feel that this movie's a very underrated film. So.
Oh, I agree. Well, how about you, Bill?
Yeah, I was a fan. I was the same way. My parents were fans of her. Probably, I'm 6 years younger than Mike, so I can't remember what the first thing I saw her in. If it was this or if it was Overboard, or I know I saw Private Benjamin when I was a kid, but my parents used to go, probably much like both of you guys, and rent VHS tapes, and it would be like a weekend, and we'd watch movies, and they'd rent a few of them, and we'd have them there at the house, and there was a lot of Goldie Hawn movies when I was growing up, because they were a big fan of hers. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely, and I
always thought she was hot too. Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
But I think my mom knew her, especially from Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, and that's when she.
That's where my parents discovered too. Brian.
Mine too. Yeah.
And she was in a great movie that I think she was nominated for a supporting actress called Cactus Flower with Ingrid Bergman and Walter Matthau. But I think the one that we always loved too, and I guarantee you guys did too, was Foul Play with Chevy Chase.
Yeah, like I said, my mom, dad, Rowan, and Martin. And then you point out Foul Play. Another one I love is Seems Like Old Times.
Yeah, again with Chevy Chase.
Another movie that I think is really underrated is Swing Shift, where she actually met and fell in love with Kurt Russell, who is the man, by the way.
That's right. And
I think I saw that as a kid, Swing Shift. I never saw Foul Play. Bird on a Wire was one I remember when I was a kid. With Mel Gibson. And then, of course, like I said, Overboard with Kurt Russell was one.
Oh, yes.
From when I was a kid, we watched a lot. So, yeah.
And another good one that my mom always liked was also from '84, Protocol, where she kind of accidentally plays, I think she was working for the United Nations or something like that. She becomes like
yeah.
That one's a funny one, too. It's just
I remember that vaguely, too, yeah.
Yeah, she just had that fun personality that just you just immediately liked her. But for Wildcats, this is interesting because I never thought of her as someone into sports or anything, but it totally fit. And when you first saw this, were you drawn to just because Goldie Hawn was in it, or were you interested because it was a football movie? And we can start with Bill on this one.
I think we were drawn to it because of Goldie Hawn. I mean, at that age, 86, I was more baseball at that point. Yeah, I mean, I did follow. I had watched some football a little bit, but I was all about baseball. So it wasn't really the football aspect. It was just that it was a Goldie Hawn movie, and I think it helped that it was based in Illinois too, with us being in Illinois, because it was in Chicago. I mean, though we're in Southern Illinois. So one interesting fact, while I'm thinking about it too, to tell you, I have actually covered a game at that stadium where they shot the film. That Lane Technical School is where that stadium is at, and my alma mater, Alton High School down in Southern Illinois, played a playoff game up there against, I can't remember, it was one of the public league schools, but we played on that field, and I went up and covered the game and did some radio in the second half up there, but I stood on the sideline and took pictures and covered the game in the first half. And at the very beginning of the movie, where she's running her girls' track team there, and Bruce McGill comes over and starts talking to her, I was basically standing right there where she was standing. And I'm going to say that the stadium hasn't changed a bit.
Wow.
From then. I mean, it looks exactly the same. It was really kind of eerie when I was watching the movie.
How about you, Mike?
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Did you want to see?
Sorry.
Did you see this movie because you were into football, or was it because of Goldie Hawn?
Well, mostly because of Goldie, but I liked the game. I always liked the game. I mean, my memories of football for me as a child. I mean, obviously, I was a child of the 70s, born in 1970, so the Steelers became kind of my team. But the other team that I loved was the St. Louis Football Cardinals.
Right.
But until they were traitors and fucking left us for Phoenix. But
Neil Lomax.
Yeah. I was, so there was a while there where my earliest memories of football, honestly, was I just remember my dad and his buddies being on there hanging out and drinking and bitching about Bill Bidwell and how much he was a cheap son of a bitch. And because it's like there was a period there in the 70s where when I was little, the Cardinals was actually a pretty competitive team.
Oh, yeah.
because we had Don Coryell, who went on to greater fame with Air Coryell in San Diego. You know, he was our coach, and he took the Cardinals to the playoffs like every year he was coach. Unfortunately, we always got eliminated in the first round, but he got us there at least. And of course, they got rid of him, and then the Cardinals went right back to sucking again. But yeah, but I always had the Steelers there too. And then once the Cardinals left, the Steelers kind of became my team. But yeah, mainly because of Goldie Hawn. I believe I watched it on cable. My parents had just gotten cable around that time period because I lived in a rural area in Meadowbrook, and you know, we weren't as fancy as Alton and some of the other towns like Edwardsville that had cable way before us. We did. Of course, I can't complain because from what Bildo told me, it was even a few number of years later that he finally got cable. But they played this movie quite a bit on the air, and I watched it almost every time it would come on. I would find myself watching it. It's a funny, very, very funny movie, I think. You know, I love it. I think Goldie's great in it. I think everybody. I love the principal. Right. Love that guy.
Nipsey Russell.
Hilarious.
Yeah, he's great.
He was hilarious. Yeah, he was right.
So we'll get right into it because you guys just recently rewatched it. How does it hold up for you guys now compared to when you first started? And we can go with Mike first.
Overall, I think it holds up pretty well. I mean, there's definitely some things in it that you're like, oh, total 80s. The keyboard soundtrack. I mean, the 80s was all about the keyboards, man. It's like they discovered this synthesizers and all these musicians, whether it was in rock, metal, whatever, and even in soundtracks for movies, they just went nuts with the keyboards, man. So it kind of dates it a little bit there. But I've always been somebody that I never judge a movie by today's standards, especially if it's an older film, especially if it's a film before my time. I mean, that's one thing that, you know, that grinds my gears is when people try to judge things by today's standards, especially older films. I'm like, you do realize that was the top of the line special effects they had at that time, fools. But yeah, I really like this movie, and I think it's really cool because like it's Wesley Snipes' first appearance in film. Woody Harrelson. I thought a lot of the characters was a really cool ensemble. Very, very funny. I mean, Jan Hooks is even in this movie, and I forgot about that.
That's right.
So yeah, very, very funny movie. I love some of the dialogue and stuff, but we can get into that a little bit more.
Sure.
But yeah, I like this movie. And I think overall it's, I mean, me and Bill, we laughed out loud a few times watching it. And I had not seen this movie in a long time, bro.
Right.
So yeah, it was good pick, by the way.
Thanks, man. You bring up a good point about comparing, films now to then, and it's actually the same thing with sports players. Like when we say like, oh, is this person the greatest of all time when you compare it to someone else from a bygone era, and you can't compare it because the rules in the game are completely different. The training's different. It's the same thing with movies. So
at the risk of sounding totally non-PC, yeah, they've kind of pussified the game a bit, in my opinion. I'm not trying to be hardcore and say I want my players getting hurt and damaged, but what I'm saying is like when people want to label Brady the greatest, and don't get me wrong, Brady's a great quarterback. I'm not taking anything away from him, but what would he have been like in the 70s when you didn't have pass interference and you didn't have roughing the passer and you didn't have man, he'd have gotten that pretty motherfucker would have gotten smashed. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry.
And then if you swap it, could you imagine Dan Marino playing today? I mean, he put up record numbers with all these rules.
Oh my God, yeah.
He would destroy. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, in the immortal words of Rod Woodson, he said it best because they had voted Brady, I think maybe number one. He's like, look, man, I played against Brady. I played against John Elway and Dan Marino. And I forget who the other guy was. Maybe Brett Favre. He goes, Tom Brady ain't better than any of those guys. And I was like, ooh. But you know what? I understood what Rod was trying to say, especially Marino, man. If Marino played today's rules, he'd have video game numbers, man.
Totally.
Brady who?
Yep.
So I think I want a horseshoe up his ass as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I got to know Kevin Green a little bit from doing my sports writing stuff because he's from around here. And I got to interview him. And, I mean, he's one of the greatest pass rushers of all time. And I mean, what he got to do to quarterbacks, he wouldn't have been able to do in today's game. And I mean, he used to just get after guys. And a guy like Brady never really had to deal with a guy like Kevin Green. I mean, I get Clay Matthews is probably the closest thing you'd see to Kevin Green, because Kevin Green was Clay Matthews' coach.
Right.
Kevin and I talked about that. He kind of taught Clay to do some of the things he did. But let's look what happened to Clay Matthews as the game kept evolving. Clay Matthews became a penalty machine because everything was roughing the passer by the time, later on in his career with the Packers, where he couldn't do shit anymore.
That's right.
I mean, I think, not to completely make it about football away from the movie, but yeah, I mean, it has changed. And I'm the same way as Mike with as far as when I watch a movie, I look at it in the time frame of when it was filmed.
Sure.
And what was going on then. So I try not to judge it by today's standards like you did. It was hard not to judge some of the music in there. Like you said,
sure.
Keyboard heavy. Some of it was pretty bad, but I mean, other than that, yeah, I mean, it was, I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, and after watching it, I'm adding it to my collection because this is one I don't have. I'm going to get it because I enjoyed it that much.
If you wait a few months, because we're recording this in April of 2021, Shout Factory is going to reissue it on Blu-ray, and they're going to have all sorts of special features. So by the time, so I'm gonna wait to release this so I can hear all the special features, so we can add some stuff to this. And but Shout Factory does an amazing job. If you want to own Blu-ray for them.
Okay.
Yeah,
very cool.
Something to think about. So, I'm glad you guys mentioned some of the co-actors in this, because you think, I mean, Goldie Hawn definitely is the star here. And you guys mentioned a few, like Swoosie Kurtz was in it. I think Robyn Lively as the daughter is great. And the one that's really funny that I didn't even realize it, definitely didn't realize it at first, but then once I looked at his filmography, Mykelti Williamson is Bubba from Forrest Gump.
Right.
And he looks nothing. But he looks nothing like what Bubba ended up looking like, No,
not at all. But he did great as Bird. And I mean, I had forgotten that he was in it until I rewatched it. But Mike didn't realize who it was. I had to tell Mike who it was.
Yeah, I was like, really? I was like, no way. So, yeah, very, very cool movie, man. Like I said, Bruce McGill plays a total prick.
D-Day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, God, man. But yeah, it's a good movie, man. Like I said, I caught myself laughing at parts, and I hadn't seen that movie in, man, like I said, dude, it's been a long time. I really enjoyed it, man. I thought everybody in it was really good.
Well, it was cool seeing. I was going to say it was cool seeing Wesley and Woody kind of together and realizing that was the first time they'd done stuff together, and all the things that they did moving forward, like White Men Can't Jump, and, Money Train, and, they kind of became that kind of action comedy duo, and that was kind of where that started, and they were both great in it too.
Definitely. And the other guy that I thought was great is the guy who played Finch, Tab Thacker. I knew him because of Police Academy. He was in Police Academy 4. He played House. So he's great in this. Right. He's comic relief.
My favorite line there is when they're dressing him and they go, "Man, how did his folks let him get this way? Man, he probably ate his folks."
Right.
Oh man.
But yeah, he's trying to like take money from the other so he can play for the other team. Like he's all about like just making money, and he's doing other guys' papers and things like that. But it's an 80s movie. There are cliches in it, so he does have redeeming values. But so here we go. You watch the movie. What are some of the funniest scenes that you guys remember from just rewatching? And we'll start with Bill.
I would say one of my favorite parts is when they give her the pocket watch and she's up on stage. They fix your watch for her or whatever, and they said it's from your pussies, and she's reading it. She starts crying, and it's supposed to be so like touching, and it's just hilarious,
Yeah, that's probably my favorite part, because that's one of the parts that, even though I hadn't seen the movie in years, it stood out to me. I remembered that part because I told Bill, I was like, "Yeah, dude, I remembered that part, man. I was waiting for Bill's reaction, and of course he laughed his ass off." But I mean, man, there's so many. Of course, like when she comes into the locker room and they're not wearing any pants, and she goes, be on the 5 and field minutes.
Yeah.
Just the whole when she outruns them all and outdoes them, and then she's like, "I'll see you on the field tomorrow, you pussies. Fuck you."
Yeah.
Fuck you what? Fuck you, Coach McGrath. I'm like, very, very funny, man.
That was a great scene. And so, like, even though you knew it was coming, that's the best because she needed to prove herself. And the only way she was going to get them to come on board is by beating them at their own game. And she totally did. Yep.
What about seeing her in the bathtub, too? That's probably one of the best parts, too.
There you go.
For us guys, anyway.
Definitely. See, today's kids who have the internet, they have everything at the click of a mouse. Little things like that made a big difference in renting and cable. So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Best times at Richmond High, baby. Come on, man.
Trading places.
Yeah.
Another
exactly.
Yeah.
Porky's for me. Remember, I recorded Porky's with you before, and I told you the story about me and my buddy Kevin sneaking that movie when my parents went to bed and watching it and trying to keep the sound down so we didn't get caught. And the shower scene was amazing. For us when we were in junior high. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Were there any scenes for you guys that you would have changed, or any plot points you would have changed or included, or anything that comes to mind?
That's a good question. Not really. I mean, maybe a little bit more emphasis on because I mean they kind of do that in the in the credits when they show her and her dad, and obviously that's where she accumulated her football knowledge, and they kind of reference her a little bit. But I thought maybe a little bit more background on that, But other than that, dude, I have no complaints. It's a funny movie. It's got great dialogue, and I like the part also in court where the lawyer's just being a his lawyer.
Yeah.
Her ex's lawyer. It's just being a complete prick and going for the jugular. And that one guy, he says something about relevant. He goes, "I got your fucking relevant right here, motherfucker," or whatever. And then the judge goes, "What? You all think he bad?"
Yeah.
He slapped with a, what do they call that?
Injunction or exactly. I know what you're talking about. Like,
contempt for court. Yeah.
Contempt for. Yep.
It was, and I even thought the judge was cool, man.
She was great.
Like I said, I loved the principal, especially the part when McGill's like, "I just wanted to point out that you got your, some of these," and he goes, "Oh, I'll look right into that on the computer, and we should be getting our computer in about 2 years." And he takes the paper and he crumples it up.
Yep.
Basically tells him to get the fuck out in a very nice and polite way.
That's right.
Or if
what did Nipsey Russell been on before that? I know he'd been around for a while. He was obviously not new to acting at that point, but
he was in The Wiz. He played the Tin Man.
Okay,
that's right. Yeah.
And then he was just kind of the guy you would see like all the time, like on like TV shows. He was actually on Laugh-In too. He was a guest performer.
Okay.
I believe he was on a lot of sitcoms too back in the day. I do remember, but I always thought he was funny, especially the way he'd just go, right.
No, it was a great catchphrase. Yeah, you totally remember him as that. But I kept thinking he was in more things, but a lot of times he would just show up. I think he'd be on like talk shows and like the $25,000 Pyramid and those game shows.
Oh, okay, yeah. Another actor we're leaving out, and we shouldn't because he's a great one, is Emmett Walsh.
Oh,
yeah.
And when Mike, I didn't think about that until Mike brought up the backstory of her dad, which maybe we could have seen that with a little bit more through Emmett Walsh, who was her dad's friend, because I would have liked to seen a little bit more of his character in the movie. He's such a great character actor. And, I believe he's still alive. I mean, he's been in so many things over the years that I love. I know I have a ton of movies with him, from Harry and the Hendersons to obviously
Back to School.
Back to School. The Jerk.
Yep.
He
hates these cans.
The first. This one's not a comedic role, but what was the first Coen Brothers movie?
Blood Simple.
Blood Simple. He's in that. I mean,
Blade Runner.
Just a great actor. Blade Runner, right? Yeah, so many great movies, and I mean, so you'd be remiss not to mention him too.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean,
For
this
sure.
is really a great ensemble cast. Great. I mean, Goldie Hawn's definitely the star, but the reason this movie works is because you have all these great side characters and these great actors.
There is another thing we have to mention, though, Bill.
The football shuffle?
Cheerleaders. The
Oh.
cheerleaders.
Oh, yeah.
Your mama says you're ugly, yeah.
You don't need no
Fucking
alibi.
love
You
them.
ugly. UGLY ugly.
I
We
died,
talked about
man.
the cheerleaders.
They're
They were
great.
awesome.
Yeah, I was just like, oh god, that was so funny, man.
Which is almost kind of like a throwback in some way to the original Longest Yard, where they had the kind of the not so great cheerleaders cheering.
right.
But this is a different way. But yeah, just having the non-traditional cheerleaders was perfect. And I have a little I have a clip where you hear all their cheers in one little medley. So you'll appreciate it. Well, the other
I
thing
love it.
at the end is the football shuffle with a nod to the Bears of '85.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to ask you now, Brian. Do you know? I asked Mike this earlier, and he did not know. What does LL Cool J stand for?
Oh, I used to know this, and I'm not going to look it up because I don't want to cheat. Oh, it's something like, was it Lovely Ladies, like, or what? Ladies Love Calvin or something like that?
Ladies Love Cool James.
Cool James, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get the Ladies Love. So yeah,
It's
Good
so
one.
80s, but yeah,
No, it is.
But that's what it stands for. And he makes a cameo up on this at the prom or whatever.
He does.
He's on stage, very short, but he's got his little kangaroo hat on like he wore back in the day, and yeah, just very short cameo on screen. I'm surprised they didn't get him as one of the players, but
Yeah.
Well,
I hand it to him and Ice-T, both from the 80s, that are still relevant today on TV shows.
right? Yeah, I mean he's on NCIS.
Los Angeles, I think.
Yeah, the one with Chris O'Donnell. I can't remember which one it is. And then of course, Ice-T. You mentioned him. He's still on Law and Order.
SVU.
SVU, yeah. So.
Yep. Yeah, you got to hand to the guys that stay relevant in pretty tough business. So, and actually, wasn't LL Cool J? Didn't he play a football player in
Any Given Sunday?
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. So there you go.
It's a lot bigger by then. He got.
Oh, yeah.
He started working out after he'd been around for a little while. He was pretty new to the scene. I learned today just looking through some stuff. That movie or that song. The football. I think it's just called Football.
Yeah.
It
Football
was
Rap.
Football Rap. That's what it's called. He never released that on anything.
No.
Yeah. So it was never released on any of his albums or even on the soundtrack for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So
another thing I like about that song is how he gives references to all the great players over the years. I mean, some of them go way back, man. It was
he
like
was referencing Y.A. Tittle and Red Grange.
There
and
you
all
go.
that
I
crazy
know,
stuff.
yeah, I know, yeah.
That's good stuff.
Celine and Sammy Baugh, all those guys, man. I was like, wow.
Well, you just made my dad and uncle happy. You're throwing back way. That's actually even before their time. Sammy Baugh.
Oh, Sammy Baugh goes back, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
Sonny
you're talking
Jurgensen.
about a guy who was making records at a time when the game was just a lot rougher than it is now, man.
Absolutely.
And he put up
Absolutely.
insane numbers. So
To wrap this up, let's quickly go through. How do you guys feel about the gameplay? And be brutally honest here. We'll start with Bill.
I didn't think it was terrible. I mean, the most unrealistic thing and the thing that made me roll my eyes the most is Finch blocking that.
The kick. Oh yeah, that was even close.
I mean, how did he get like he's going to get that much air? I mean, it was like he was flying.
Oh,
That was the most ridiculous thing and unbelievable part of the movie. I mean, you knew he was going to make a big play.
Sure.
But I mean, I was like, come on, guys, that's what you do. But I mean, for the most part, I thought Mykelti Williamson looked decent at quarter. He was pretty slow, but I mean, he moved pretty well. And then Wesley, I mean, if that was him doing it or whatever, I mean, he looked good running the football and things like that. But the most unbelievable thing was Finch blocking that kick.
totally. And as far as the gameplay, to me, it looked like high school sports, man.
Yeah.
Which sometimes can be very sloppy.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So I didn't think it was that. Oh my God, that's horrible. I mean, obviously, I don't expect NFL level of play or even collegiate level of play in a fucking high school game. So to me, it was fine.
I think the only trope there, every single one of these movies has like a torrential downpour that happens maybe once every few years with these type of things. And it just kind of, that's typical of Hollywood too. You never have like light mist. Everything's a torrential downpour.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it be football or not. So there you go. You were going to say something, Bill.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and even when I was talking about, we'll just call him Bubba. It's easier to say than Mykelti Williamson.
Sure.
But when Bubba's dropping back and everything, I mean, I was going to say, even when you're watching high school quarterbacks, there's usually a 3-step drop, and they're a little slower at things developing. So even at that, I mean, it looked pretty realistic to me. But you are right about the rain. I mean, they always have to make everything more dramatic, but that's Hollywood. So.
Well, it's Hollywood, dude. I mean, they always do that, especially at the sports movies.
Definitely. Well, as always, guys, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for revisiting
Anytime, Brian Davis.
And we will, and I would be remiss. I've already promoted it before we got into this interview, but I'm going to promote it again every Friday night on That Metal Station. It's the Metal Mike Show with his co-host, Bill Doe, who may or may not be there. It depends if he has to work or not, but he's often there. And it's a great time. It's so much fun. And what you get, what you just heard now, is just a smidgen of what you would hear on their show. They go into all sorts of fun things. So 8 p.m. Eastern time every Friday night. Check it out. Thank you again, guys.
I humbly thank you for the plug. And all y'all, make sure you listen to the Bad Beat every Wednesday. I believe 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Good job, Mike, because we're going to go into that right now.
Come hang out and chill with Brian A. Davis and the Bad Beat. Wednesdays, 11 p.m. Eastern, right here on thatmetalstation.com.